Hyvää aamupäivää myös minun puolesta. Olen Outi Ronkainen Muistiliitosta ja toimin tämän session puheenjohtajana. Meillä on tänään 5 esitystä ja nämä ovat suomen kielellä. So welcome everybody. This session is in...
Tervetuloa kaikille. Tämä on suomenkielinen osio. Meillä on 5 esitystä, mutta täällä...
Eli ensimmäisenä saadaan kuulla Sairaalaklovnitoiminnasta. Aihetta meille esittelee
The speaker is Henna Leino, who works as a researcher, PhD, in Human Science Collegium at the University of Turku in Finland. And her field of research is service related, and in particular customer needs, vulnerability customers, customers who have vulnerabilities and their family members, and inclusion of them within services. Henna, please, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. I represent the Miina Sillanpää Foundation, and I will talk about the Know Your Resources peer support group model and the tools that it offers for preventing abuse and neglect in informal care settings. I joined the project at a very late stage, and I was not involved in developing it, but I would like to tell you about the detailed and the quite challenging phenomenon of abuse in informal care setting or family care settings. Thank you. Know Your Resources was indirectly funded by the Ministry of Social Affairs and Health, and its project funding mechanism for 2020 to 2023. It is a collaboration between 4 different stakeholders: Miina Sillanpää Foundation, Maria Academy Rehabilitation Foundation, and the Family Carers Alliance in Finland. It is coordinated by the Miina Sillanpää Foundation. Each of these collaborators brought their own expertise and angle to the project, and obviously it is very much needs-based, and one of the operational models that would deserve a separate section, namely a developer group comprising family caregivers who were very heavily involved in the development, giving feedback and comments, they were commenting on the communication materials and published opinions on the matters, and it was really great that they could be involved in the co-development, co-creation of this project as representatives of the so-called target group. And the background for this project was quite shocking, if you will. The risk of family caregivers of burning out, and therefore they end up with the risk of using violence or abusing the person that they are caring for. And here the target group was women, family caregivers, females over the age of 60. And we wanted to support their well-being and coping, and we wanted to increase their emotional skills and self-awareness and support those, and also to prevent abuse in family caregiving or informal caregiving settings. We know that violence is not necessarily familiar to care professionals, and we wanted to increase awareness among professionals through training and education, and help them to identify and to discuss the incidents of violence. And if you think about the violence that takes place in family care settings, it is a very difficult topic. It's a difficult topic to address, and it is a taboo of a sort in our society. But there are many factors contributing to the risk of violence in a family caregiving setting. A family caregiver may burn out, and they often forget to take care and care for themselves and care for their needs. Often financial figures or factors may play into this, and also their own sickness and illness. And whenever we're talking about dementia, the care is very time consuming. It takes all of your time, and also the mechanisms of violence and lack of understanding cause people to tire and burn out quicker. Violence among women is lesser known phenomenon in our society. Femininity is often linked with the nurturing characteristics, and women more often tend to give up their own needs and neglect their own needs, and therefore the question of emotional skills and emotional intelligence is an interesting factor. Today's aging population, what are their emotional skills? Very often we talk about the younger generations, that they have better emotional skills, but how good are the emotional skills among the elderly population or aging population, and how are they able to ask for help and to communicate about the situation, verbalize the situation, if there are no words to describe those situations where violence occurs. There are many forms of violence, but all of them risk a person's health and safety and security. It's interesting that in a project and in our work with clients, in group discussions, violence targeted at yourself, it's not often seen as violence. When there's lack of mercy towards yourself, difficulty of allowing yourself to rest and to feel positive emotions. This was something that was brought up, one form of violence that was brought up very often, that those carers are violent towards themselves in these ways. Physical violence and neglecting care is rarer than mental violence. Very often in our discussions, these carers said that they were taking care of their loved one with dementia and also neglecting their own needs. Therefore, it's important to stop and face those emotions and increase self-awareness and also feel compassion towards yourself. That would be an important approach or strategy. The model, know your resources. It is based on a preventive violence, anti-violence work developed at the Maria Academy since 2003. And the background is to increase self-awareness, mindfulness, recognizing your own needs and also communicating those needs, and also controlling, regulating your emotions, recognizing your resources and lack thereof, and using those resources. The peer group work was preceded by individual discussions with a counsellor, and the need for service counselling emerged quite strongly. The family caregivers, they were directed to receive other services, and also these people reported incidences of violence from the person with dementia toward the family caregiver, which then led to certain measures. It would be important to, and the idea is to continue our operations and the activities in the local member societies of the Finnish Informal Care Alliance. And we have a peer group model that is available online for everyone who is interested. In practice, the peer group, we reached some 100 family caregivers, and of them 50 participated in the group work part. We had 11 groups in total, with a maximum of 6 participants. They were closed groups, all of them. And in the groups we discussed different themes, for instance, aging needs, and we provided psychoeducation, awareness of the phenomenon of violence, and we worked and processed different occupational methods. And the youngest participant was just under 60 and the oldest was 83, and the majority were between the ages of 65 and 75 years of age. And there were also many people with dementia, or people caring, spouses caring for their spouse with dementia. Although it may sometimes be difficult for those family caregivers to participate in this kind of activity if they cannot find someone to care for the loved one during those meetings. We conducted and evaluated the outcomes and in the form of group interviews, and here are some excerpts, some of the themes that emerged, the well-being impacts for the family caregivers that emerged: increased self-awareness, better ability to process one's own emotions. Someone said that without the course, I don't think I could have been able to process my feelings related to grief and letting go. And they found that they were helped in setting their own boundaries, and it was important to realize that it's important to realize and remember your own value and your own boundaries. They found new perspectives to your own life, and also they felt that they were able to, then the incidences of abuse towards or neglect in caring for the loved one was diminished. In a brief summary, it is able to improve the well-being of family caregivers with a short-term psychoeducation and peer support activity, and this is also something that the family caregivers wish for and need. Based on previous researches, the need for psychosocial support is vital for family caregivers. Need to check my notes so that I remember what I wanted to say. What was quite essential is the peer aspect, the peer support that the groups provided. There are many emotions that emerged, that were verbalized: loneliness, insufficiency, shame, guilt. And the peer support helped alleviate those emotions, negative emotions, as you were able to process those emotions with people in the same situation. And the spouses caring for their spouse with dementia were preoccupied by the fact that their relationship was turned or transformed into a care relations, and obviously adapting to that emotionally is difficult for many people. Also, setting your own boundaries and taking into account your needs was found to be a challenge. And as professionals were educated, they became more aware in various care settings, who meet family caregivers in various settings. They are now more aware of neglect as a phenomenon, and through our materials and through the training, they found the courage to maybe address those potential risk situations. The materials are freely available to all. You can find them online at the www.miinasillanpää.fi. You see the address there. The materials comprise videos, and there's the Tunne, the emotional scales, tools for family caregivers. It's a booklet and a meter. You can find it in the back of this room if you want to take it with you, or maybe give it to someone who is caring for their loved one with dementia. And it also contains the Tunne emotional scales meter to help to address these problems, and also the Know Your Resources Tunne voimavarasi peer group model, and also videos linked to the peer group model training is available online. Thank you. This was all from me.
Kiitos Elisa. Ja
Thank you, Elisa. Indeed, by the door, you can take your copies and the materials, and of course ask Elisa as well directly if you had any questions. We will now move on to our next presentation, and this is related to service system. So this is family care people with dementia in the service system, and we have here Ulla Halonen, who will be now presenting the PhD dissertation project contents. And she used to work for the public sector in elderly care, in Alzheimer associations. Actually was my manager in the past, and today she's an entrepreneur but also a researcher. Go ahead, please. Good morning to all of you. My name is Ulla Halonen. I actually forgot my badge at the hotel. I was thinking, will they let me enter and speak to you? But luckily, yes, they, well, I don't know, knew me to this extent that they let me in. Currently, I am a part-time researcher and part-time entrepreneur. But as Outi just mentioned, this presentation is based on my PhD dissertation that was published this spring. And let's see how far we can go with it, because I only have 15 minutes, so I'm too excited to present my whole dissertation within 15 minutes. I don't know if I can really do it entirely or not. So some background for you. I have provoked people with my presentations. Whenever we think about crisis of caretaking, it's something that involves all of us. It concerns us. And I have been thinking that this is quite interesting. Since if you think of the population or demographic changes taking place here, we have seen this a long time ago. I remember when I was a student about 20 years ago in the University of Virkola, my professor wrote to the whiteboard, that was actually Korean at the time, the biggest question in the future is who will take care of whom and where. And yet, I feel that despite of that, we are all drifting towards this situation that all of a sudden we are facing this surprise, which is not a surprise. We have seen this beforehand. We also reflected the objectives here in Finland and in other countries that elderly people will live in their own homes. That was created when we did not know what dementia really means, what memory disorders mean from the perspective of living at home, and the service system was not developed from that perspective. We can already now say that the responsibility of family members, of their loved ones, and the responsibility of people of others is increasing, and this is all based on research. And just as background, I wanted to highlight this reflection. I was thinking, what is memory disease? What does that mean? And is it really the good name for this, memory disease, as we say it in Finnish language? I will not go through all of these reflections. I'm sure you know all of this. What are the symptoms? We could also talk about the different stages of disorders. But what type it is, and it is always individual disease, remember that. And how it is visible in your daily lives changes and varies from person to person. But maybe this is not the best word for it, memory disease. If you only had a disease related to memory, it might be easier to reflect on how to do things. We could use some external help to your memory. So it is a reflection. What does it mean when we talk about memory disorders or disease, when we're thinking of people living at home and in their daily lives? Here we have some background information on informal care, so family members being the caretakers. And I had the headline in my research, family carers of people with dementia in service system. But perhaps the attention, if you think of the difference between everyday language and research language in Finland, is that there's a concept of informal care in Finland, which is relating to people who have signed an agreement of being the caretakers of their loved one, and the agreement is between them and the public sector service system. But if you think of this as more extensive concept, then it means any person taking care of another person who is not able to do things anymore. And in that case, it is all about family caregiving and informal care. And this is what I use as well here on the slide. And these numbers, what you see here, are out of date already by now. Even though informal care is a huge phenomenon, yet we don't have very much recent studies on it. Something I actually did make an update of the slide a few days ago, and I checked the number, which is the official number of informal carers, and I was amazed that that number dropped from 50,000 to 47,000 caregivers. So this is what has happened here, even though we have here people who are, well, who need residential homes, and yet the official status of being a family caregiver, and then there's less actually family care given to people with dementia. One surprise to me was, based on the studies, that if you think of regular help by people who love you, it's quite common. It is more common compared to many other European countries. And currently, we know that people with memory disorders, that is the main reason why there are official informal caretakers. And they're usually over 65 years age, they are retired, and they take care of their spouse who has a memory disease. But I want to highlight that the official number for informal caretakers is a very low number. In my own research, I have two sets of materials as my source. So a questionnaire, which actually comes from Alzheimer's Europe's survey, Finland being one of the 5 European countries involved. And I had the answers provided by spouses and adult children. And I also collected my own material, where there were spouses and adult children involved as well. And I wanted to limit my research to these people because they are the most typical group of people who take responsibility of a family member who lives with dementia. Usually daughters, actually. So majority of children were daughters, not sons. But that would be another headline, why that is the case. That's another topic. But my question I asked, are you partners? Are they customers? Who are they? I have a theoretical framework. You can see this in detail later if you want to. But I wanted to know, what about the family members? Where do they place themselves and where are the spheres? Are they inside the system? Are they alongside with the system? Are they parallel to it? Where are they? As for spouses and adult children, can we talk about them at the same time? Because it's very different to be a spouse than having the role of an adult child. The age is very different. Usually the spouses live in the same flat, adult children live elsewhere. So therefore responsibility and role are different for them. And what I think of the previous speaker, I think, yes, spouses need to be encouraged to use services. They did not identify their own situation at all, but adult children were more ready to use services, and they did recognize that they are in anxiety. They perhaps wanted to reach out to services. Can we talk about them at the same time or not? Maybe there is a common horizon here. Family members are responsible for everyday, daily lives, no matter what their role is. I will not read out the list of tasks, but there are a lot of daily tasks here: transportation, doing the paperwork, cleaning, coordination, giving medication, so forth. Very much a long list of things. Many tasks that are carried out. And something I wanted to ask within the framework of this research was that if we have in the Finnish constitution the right to get sufficient care, that's in the Finnish constitution. There is a stipulation like that. What does care mean if this is not care? If you, in practice, couldn't get any help from the society to do these tasks? So there's a conflict there. And this is something I want to bring up here. When we will have this discussion in the Finnish society to know what is care and what is something that you need to do yourself or with the help of your family members, and what is then the task for the public sector. One other thing that I could speak at length is the assessment of needs for services. This was highlighted multiple times as well. when I was reviewing my data. So it means that when you do an assessment of needs for services, it is not equal, meaning that we have, let's say, customer-centered or patient-centered system. And whenever there's an assessment of a situation, in practice, it only focuses on the person who is having the disease and the assessment that is their own assessment. But we all know that if you think of memory disorders, momentarily you might have a better capacity to function, or you can speak of things here and now momentarily better if you think of your past. So therefore I had this question myself, what should we do? There was a surprise to me that these assessments are carried out by experts. They are professionals. So is it really like that? And it is a fact that if you think of family members who are the caretakers, they were not heard at all. Not at all. There were situations where the family members' view was totally different. The responsibility of daily life was fully lying on the shoulders of the family member, but the person who had memory disorders, I can perform many, many things. I can jump and run and do cartwheels in front of the evaluator. And then the evaluator said, okay, there is no need for any support for the person. The person manages well. And we all know that those who seek any support for informal care will not receive that support. 1/5 will not get any support benefits. And this is, well, not statistical research, but this is a quality one. But I think that family carers, people with dementia, are at the risk of being outside the service allowances or the support. And there's only one study that has been made on that topic. And that study showed that there is justification given, that there's no sufficient need to get any support. And therefore there were rejections of the applications. We need more research on this. Whose needs are being assessed and what are the criteria used? That is the question. How do you take into account the family member's view? And how do you assess the needs of that family carer? There were also barriers on how to use services, even though services would have been perhaps there, but there were barriers to their use. I don't have much time to go through this, but I have written an article related to my PhD dissertation, why people who are family carers don't use services. You can refer to that to get more information. But there was one descriptive quote. This was by a spouse. Situation was okay at home, but the wife would have wanted to once a month go to a concert. She's been to concerts before, and she wanted to see that going to concert would support her well-being and her functionality. And then she asked the municipality, because municipality were in charge of this, so she asked the municipality, can I please get a replacement at home? That is all I need, but it would be good to have this replacement at home. She got a phone call saying that yes, for Friday morning, at 8 o'clock in the morning. Well, a lady said, well, I don't need it at 8 o'clock in the morning. I don't know where to go. Friday morning at 8 o'clock, I don't know where to go. So, how will the service system respond to your needs? If ever you have any services. I can speak about length. I know I don't have the time to speak about that. Elisa also talked about coping, the attitude that you cope. That is how I understood your presentation. But the most common reason is that the person who has memory disorder can't even talk about the situation or the needs. There are certain results that we can share now. People with memory disorders and their family members, rather, their role is not recognized to the sufficient level. It is not recognized, it's not taken into account, it is not assessed, it is not supported sufficiently either. They are now actually filling in the gaps in the official service system, and therefore we talk about double poverty in services. Of course, everything is very individual. Whatever are the needs and the occasions, they are very individual, and it is a challenge to the service system. And you should tailor-make all services for the individual. This is a challenge. Yes, they talk about the treatment path, but my question is, where is that path? I don't have the time to dwell on that care path, but anyway, people, family members need support at the early stage of the disease. And many people felt that after diagnosis there was a gap. There was nothing offered to them unless you had some home care services provided to your home. When I asked, are family caretakers having a role in the service system? Now you can guess the role was for them. It's not very hard to draw the lottery. Yes, they were very much just as a resource. That was their role. But if you want to have some further information, you can find it online. My dissertation is online. And furthermore, you have an English language summary of it as well. And I will continue this in another project. This is the other, which is more about inclusion and own voice of family carers. And I will stop my marathon right now. Thank you very much for listening.
Kiitos. Kiitos, Ulla.
Thank you. And I strongly encourage you to read Ulla's dissertation, and you can find her blog writings also online. Let's move on in our schedule. Next we're hearing experiences from the Northern Ostrobothnia region and supporting families dealing with dementia through organizing cooking classes. Mia Kammonen is a socionom by training, and she has worked in the Oulu Local Memory Association for years. At the moment she's working as a memory expert. Ella Palokka, her research partner, is a home economics teacher and works in the same project as a nutritional advisor and expert. The floor is yours.
Welcome. Thank you, Outi. Good morning to all of you. And I will be next speaking about inclusion, how that has steered my life and the life of my family. The life of me and my family changed years ago when I had to retire because I was incapacitated to work. But we have found a new way to walk. At first we were lost. But at that point, you should not be too hasty and choose things quickly. We gave it some time and things smoothed out, and then we were looking into the future. That was our direction. We want to have a good life with the memory disease and despite of its restrictions. And we were able to do this. But it has required understanding and trust from people close to me. We've had diversity in life, and we have been feeling the inclusion in many spheres of life. A memory disease is not something that concerns me, but it concerns the entire family. At the early stage of the disease, you should be listening to the family members' opinions closely. And throughout the years, I have tried to hold on to that idea. I don't want everything to revolve around me only. When I no longer worked, I felt shame. In the morning, my wife and neighbors went to work, and I felt not useful at all. But I was not depressed. I became active. I took the vacuum cleaner. I helped my wife in the domestic work, even though I felt some difficulties when doing it. I had sense of humor. I forgave myself, and therefore I was able to succeed. I was not too demanding. Little by little, I understood how to live with this new life, and I got the sense of security back. I felt success, and that reinforced my feeling of self-esteem. Situation had been very stressful because of the diagnosis, but I received help from a psychiatric nurse and also people from the disabled program and elderly program. They all helped us out. I presented also my wishes as for the services, and they quite well understood my needs, I have to say. I was included into a balance group for elderly people with memory diseases, and they also had daily activities organized. And the best part of these groups is that I had new social contacts in them. At that point, I gave up my driver's license voluntarily because I saw that I'm a danger to the traffic. And when I got the taxi, used to ride to taxi to disability services, I was able to access to different events. I had further journeys so that I could use I could take taxi, and I was defending myself, and I was always applying for new taxi rides. The social work of the hospital also guided me to contact the local member association, so Alzheimer's Society, which was a local one. I was thinking twice whether to open the door, but it was worthwhile open that door. They received me there with great understanding and very nicely and warmly. And I went to a peer group of other people who had early stage and early onset of their dementia. And I particularly liked the lecturers, and there were many speakers who came over. And the speakers I listened to and what they said, that was very useful. I was really thirsty for any information, and that was very important to me. These experts also gave me guidance and advice and information on the adjustment course that can be taken, because the person with the disease and the members of the family need different support forms. You might be puzzled and confused at first, but when you get steering and guidance, then you are in a better place to get inclusion as well. I'm not a researcher, but this is my view. I believe in this. With my own experience, I wanted to bring this up. And it did not a very long time. I went to Southern Savolax area to a rehabilitation course, and we both felt that it was very important for the two of us being rehabilitated. There was a psychologist who were listening to me, and the comment was of that, Petri, you should be an expert yourself. And these were the words that steered me into a new direction. In the local association, I mentioned about this, and they, of course, took on this and took action. After a short while, I was speaking in an event organized by the local association. So the role had changed. I was no longer a listener, but I was the person giving the lecture. This was a great feeling. I had the sense of community and strong will to share my experiences with memory disorders, how I coped and lived with it. And also with our wife, we became members of the Alzheimer's work group, and I was there for 3 years. And then I needed to choose something else, because by surprise I was a candidate and then also selected as a member of the working group of Alzheimer Europe. They gave me time to reflect on this membership first, and I took it. I have to, of course, think about myself, my coping, not to be too stressed. I wanted to be, of course, active and thorough, and now do voluntary work at the national level. I prioritize activities, and I think I had the right type of decision making. I asked my wife's opinion, and even though I'm able to choose my own choices, but I still wanted to make sure that I get the support I needed from my wife. And indeed, she gave me support, and I'm very grateful to her for that support. She's been able to reinforce my participation and inclusion in life, and her employer has very understandable attitude, which matters a lot. There has been flexibility, in her case, for work days and working hours. And I have decision on 2 personal assistants. So as for my own hobbies, I have 1 assistant for that. When I'm in Finland or when I'm abroad, I'm sharing my experiences, and my wife is my personal assistant during these travels. And this was a decision that was made for severe or lengthy reasons. I applied multiple times, but we found this right solution together with the Department of the Services for the Disabled. And these decisions reinforce my ability to go to foreign places. And I said I lose objects, and it's very hard time to see traffic lights for me. I have an assistant behind me, next to me, making sure that I'm in the right position and I'm safe. A local association and the Alzheimer's Society of Finland have given me support, which I have needed. And as an expert at the early stage, I did not have the right view on my own ability. I thought I can do everything, but I was not ready yet. The Finnish Alzheimer's Society actually gave us training on how to be an experienced expert, and there it was an eye-opening experience for me. And every year I have used how to use different tools in this. I'm now networking, and this is a way for me to get direct contacts also by that people want to hear me out. And throughout the years I've had local member associations, so local Alzheimer's Society and the Finnish Society. They have all remembered that I exist. And perhaps they will remember after this my speech as well, that I'm here. And throughout the years, they have been now giving training for new experts who have the experience. We are all needed. We have our own stories to share. At the beginning, I was thinking of how it is hard to get a diagnosis. And after that, I got the feeling that I don't want to always repeat the same message again and again. I wanted to focus and speak about other things so I can develop myself and talk about something else. I don't want to be bored and only, well, leave things underway. But I felt that this is a meaningful task that I'm doing. I drafted my notes on topics that I want to share with other people. And now I lost the point. Okay, now I found it. So my topics have been cognitive barrier or accessibility, being in a relationship, rehabilitation, good life with dementia. So these are just examples of the themes. I was also asked to talk to healthcare professionals and also in different institutes of social care and healthcare. And throughout these few last years, I've had great, fruitful, constructive work together with these institutes and other stakeholders. There are also projects now involved. I've been a member here in Finland in domestic, but also international steering groups. And in these projects, I've taken up the voice of people with dementia. I've co-authored also things with academic writers. I felt that I'm equal and I'm being appreciated by them. I'm happy to see that people with dementia, as we've been heard more and more. For instance, planning the care path for us and adjusting course were being reformed, and people with dementia and their family members were being heard. We can express our views on development and stability of things. We want to be heard and voice out our rights. We have wanted to highlight positive things. The EU disability card, I've written about it to social media. I've mentioned that in publications. Alzheimer's Europe has been using these articles for the card, and now it is a better known card because of it. What about inclusion without active societies, associations? I would not be here to share my experience about inclusive life with you without them. I couldn't physically or mentally have this great well-being status without these associations. I don't think that our lives would have been so great after diagnosis without them. Many people with dementia and their family members share this view, I'm sure. I have personally found through voluntary work there's content, and other people can be memory friends or host a memory cafe. They can steer the peer groups or have another role. But we are all needed. We are voluntary workers that are needed. But I hope that political decision makers understand how important it is for us to be included in our lives. Thank you.
Kiitos Petri, oikein inspiroiva.
Thank you, Petri, for your very inspiring speech. I think we might have time for one question. It seems that you're exhausted. Oh, there seems to be one question. Could you please kindly wait for the microphone? I'm Outi Leino. I'm a stakeholder in this. In work counseling, we talk about the container principle. Things are contained. Do the clowns have some sort of debriefing after these encounters? Thank you for the question. Yes. We did not research it in itself, but we do know that after each day they debriefed and they went through the experiences, what they had learned during the day and what they had experienced, and reflected on the experiences together. And obviously we as researchers are there also, we interviewed them as well separately. But I think debriefing is an important part of their work, that they reflect and go through in pairs or together. Did I answer your question? Do you want to continue on those lines? The container means kind of feeding back, that are containing and then continuing. Yes, what was... Now I think I understood what you meant better. Yes, they did construct or build up a relationship with the clients. They spent 10 years in the care home. They learned to know what each patient liked, what they wanted to discuss, and they utilized that information. They got to learn the names of the clients or the patients, and continued on what they had sort of where they left off the previous time. That did happen, yes. All right, I warmly thank all our presenters and also the audience, and I think next we have a 15-minute break in our schedule. Thank you.